Welcome to the FC podcast. We're excited to partner for season 1 of the podcast with the prestigious FIFA Master Alumni Association, bringing you some exclusive insights from some of the brightest minds in the world of sports business. I'm James Kitching, Managing Director of the FC and a 12th edition alumnus of the FIFA Master. We'll be chatting with key leaders that have graduated from the FIFA Master from across the Asia and Oceania region, delving into their unique experiences and uncovering the secrets to their success in this dynamic industry that is sport. Now, it's my great pleasure today to welcome Kevin Goco, who is the Deputy General Secretary, or in business language, the Deputy CEO of the Philippine Football Federation. Hi, Kevin. How are you going?
I'm doing great, James, and thank you for having me on this podcast.
No, it's our pleasure, and it's great to hear your unique insights of world football. Your story is a fascinating one. But before we get started, I have to ask you some questions, which I ask everyone that jumps on. So feel free to answer them as freely or non-freely as you wish. So obviously we just heard your name, but can you tell us your nationality, which edition of the FIFA Master you came from, and most importantly, your favorite sports team? And with the disclaimer, it doesn't need to be a football team, but I suspect I know the answer to this one already. So over to you.
Okay. I am Filipino, so I'm from the Philippines. So for those of you who are not aware, Philippines is an archipelago above Indonesia and below Chinese Taipei. We're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Well, not really in the middle of it, but towards the western side of the Pacific Ocean, depending on how you look at it. And we're a nation of 7,000 islands. We're crazy about basketball in our country. And because of that, I do have a favorite football team, but my favorite sports team is actually the Los Angeles Lakers. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we're recording this in May of 2024. So the Lakers are long gone from the NBA playoffs right now. So I won't dig in a little too harder there, but obviously a very successful team. So that's good to hear. Look, obviously your position in football is a prestigious one, and congratulations for being in that role. But obviously that doesn't happen overnight, and there's a journey that everyone takes, and their journey is unique to get to these types of roles in the sports world. Can you take us through your journey up to being the Deputy General Secretary of the Philippine Football Federation?
Well, my journey in football really, I mentioned that basketball is big here in the Philippines. My favorite sports team is the Los Angeles Lakers. So I'm a huge basketball fan. I mean, that's true for almost any Filipino, right? Basketball is the number one sport in our country. But my first love was actually football, because it's the first sport that I actually took up. I spent 6 years of my childhood in Indonesia. So in Indonesia, football is the number one sport, and the ultras culture there is nuts. It's out of this world. Yeah. So when you go out, you speak to people on the street. You look at the newspapers. Well, at that time, it was social media wasn't really that widespread as it is now. Everything was all about football. So I grew up in that culture. So I fell in love with that sport. It's the first sport that I played, and it was the first place where I made friends. And that will always stick to me, right? It's a safe space where I met some of the best mates in my life, right? So I fell in love with that sport, and I moved back to the Philippines. Football is not the number one sport here in the country, but I saw so much opportunity for the sport here to develop and take root, because Filipinos genetically are not actually the tallest people. So it's kind of strange that we're all into basketball, where, I mean, of course, it's not just all about height, but height does give you an advantage in that sport, right? So I felt that, the sport that I fell in love with as a kid had a lot of potential for us here, because, you could play football on the ground, depending on how you want to play. Of course, there is some height advantage with some positions in football, but you don't need to have like 6-7 footers or 6 people above 6'6" to be able to be successful in this sport. So I really, I went to university in America. I studied in Boston University. I have a degree in economics and international relations. And usually with that background, somehow you get into finance, right? So I ended up working for a multinational bank after university. This is Citibank. And I realized early on that that wasn't really for me, right?
Yeah.
Money was good, but it was like I just felt so empty at the end of the day. I'd spend 16, 17-hour work days slaving away for something that I didn't really love. So I went ahead and followed my passions, and those passions are basically sport. Because a lot of my friends, my best mentors, the most influential people in my life outside of my parents were my coaches in football. So it really played a big impact on me. So promoting sport and doing something more creative, so more on the entrepreneurship side. So I didn't know where to start, really. I wasn't part of the federation there. I didn't have any connections. I wasn't like some son of a very influential person who could get me into a football association. So I just went ahead and tried to promote football the best way I can in a mass-based approach. So I volunteered with an NGO called Gawad Kalinga. It's a big NGO here in the Philippines, and they work in a lot of underprivileged, marginalized communities, slum communities. And that's why I zeroed in and trying to promote the game that I fell in love with as a kid. We couldn't really promote 11-a-side or field football, so we focused on street soccer and futsal because I don't know if you guys are aware, like in a lot of some communities, there's not a lot of space. It's not a lot of space available. So you make do with what you have. So small spaces. And because basketball is so big here, we have a lot of halls all over the country. So I zeroed in on that format and I promoted it in that NGO. First session we had kids, if I recall correctly, it was about 8 kids. And I did this as a weekend as a weekend volunteer. So I started off as a volunteer. And I did my finance job during the week, Monday to Friday. And then my Saturday, Sunday, I'd coach kids in these communities and slowly grew the game in these communities. When I left that organization, we had about 3,000 kids actively playing. And it was really a sport for development program because one thing that I really believe sports can do is mold character, and it can really develop values and leadership skills in individuals. I learned that firsthand, and that's what I wanted to do at the start. But then I realized that starting with a sport for development program, focusing on developing people through sport, some of these kids would actually get serious about it and become really good. And through the programs we had, we noticed some kids were going to national teams, on the football national team. So they make the transition from small-sided to the field game. Some would go on the national futsal teams. And some would even go use the sport to gain athletic scholarships to university. So it was really, for me, super fulfilling to do that. And then I worked with other groups that promoted the game in public schools. So public schools, these are not like the public schools in the UK where the rich and wealthy study there. These are like, the government-funded schools for marginalized sector of society. And then through that, our former president, ITS, was at the event, the former president of the PFF. I guess he was impressed because the following week he called me into the office in PFF and said, Kevin, do you want to help out with some of our programs? And they said that we didn't really have a futsal program in place. You want to take care of that? So I saw this opportunity to work on a blank canvas and build that. And then when I started working there, I decided I need to level up my knowledge. And that's why I went to the FIFA Master. I applied to the FIFA Master, and that taught me so much, made me believe in myself and try to really shoot for the stars. So when I came back to the Philippines, I just worked on growing the futsal game. And then when we had a new administration come in, the new president, John Gutierrez, asked me if I wanted to be the deputy general secretary of the federation. So like, from managing a certain modality of a game to trying to help run the whole thing with our general secretary.
That's such an inspiring journey. It's great to hear. I mean, firstly, how brave for a Los Angeles Lakers fan to go and study in Boston for a university.
I'll tell you what, I was in Boston for 5 years, and our school would get tickets to these games, and I did not step foot. Not in it.
He's a true fan, loyal fan.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
mean, the journey itself is inspiring, going from an NGO and volunteering, and it must have been so fulfilling seeing those kids kick on to whether it's within the football system or getting scholarships to university. I can't imagine just how rewarding that would have been for you, and then to transition into the federation and into futsal, which is a passion. And we'll come back to that because of the big news that has recently been announced for the Philippines, which I really would love to get your insight in. But first, let's talk about the FIFA Master. And you mentioned that you decided to upskill and go take an international management master. What are some of the key things that you think you learned from that experience, which you implement in your day to day, or maybe not key things you learned? What are some of the experiences that you have brought back to the Philippines and helped you in your current role now?
Well, number one is to be humble, because the FIFA Master is a course, and you took it at 12th edition, right? It's a course that relies a lot on group work. You can't be successful in the FIFA Master unless you have the ability to work well in a group or to get the most out of your team. It taught me to be open-minded to different points of view. So you may have an idea of how to do things, but you may have a group mate who may look at it from a totally different point of view, and you realize that they're not wrong. It's just a different perspective or a different way to approach things. But that's what the FIFA Master taught me, because you're about 30 to 32 people from different parts of the world, and they have a different take on how to do things. They come from different biases, different experiences, and just to be open-minded to them, because that's the best way to get the most out of your team, right? Is to get the ideas of everyone, even if you sometimes don't agree with it, right? But it teaches you to be open, open and trustful of other people's opinions. And then you kind of get the best results when you bring all these different viewpoints together and you churn something out, be it for a marketing project, a sports business project, or even a legal case study. It was great because you could get perspectives. In our edition, we had somebody from Palestine, and then we had a girl from Israel. We had interesting points of view. It was. I think that was really the best part of the course. Was learning how to deal with different people, and in a way, you grow as a leader, right? You grow as a leader because you're dealing with different personalities. Sometimes they'd even mix up the group. So in the FIFA Master, you have a core group throughout the year, but then certain modules they kind of mix it up a bit. And
someone in another podcast explained to me that they felt it was like a perfect entry into international sport because of what you just spoke about, the different opinions, the different nationalities, different ethnicities, the way people have been raised or taught, etc. Do you see that in your role? Because you have obviously a very international facing part of your role in the Philippines Football Federation.
Well, it helps because I'm the deputy Gen Sec, but my focus is really on the international relations side. So dealing with the international federations or the confederations, and you deal with different personalities and different cultures there. At the same time, it's also a good bridge to our local staff as well, to have them understand what it's like to deal with people, different views, different beliefs, and different backgrounds. Although we all speak the same language of football, there are different ways to sort of, like, let's say, enunciate or speak that language.
Totally get it. Yeah, absolutely. So tell us then. Yeah, perfect segue. So what does a day-to-day look like for a deputy general secretary or a deputy CEO of a football federation in Asia?
It's unpredictable.
Yeah.
I would say that it's not, the title is glamorous, but it's not glamorous at all, because you are putting out crises and fires every day. You may have a plan of what you want to do in the day, and then all of a sudden, nope, sorry, you have to scrap all that because something came up, right? And it's really It's exciting, but it's also, if you're somebody who likes predictability and structure, this sort of role, is kind of challenging for you. I like that. I like structure. I like predictability, but it's impossible to schedule your day because one day you'll have an issues on memberships. The next day you'll have an issue with legal side. The next day you'll have a financial concern to address. So it's so many different things that get thrown each week.
And then just to explain to the people watching or listening that the structure of football in the Philippines, you have an independent league, right? In the professional game. And so the federation, what role does it have in professional football? And what is the main role of the federation, if not professional football? What else does it do within, within the Philippines?
In terms of the professional football league, it used to be actually under the federation. And then recently we've sort of like made the conscious effort to make it independent. Because I believe the federation should not be in the business of micromanaging or handling a league. We have enough of our own problems. As I mentioned, there's always like some crisis to deal with every day. And the league should really be treated as business, And so we have a group that's handling that now. It's baby steps because, as I mentioned, football is not the most popular sport here, right? So it's a big challenge to be able to market a sport and get sponsors where it's not so big in the country. But we're working towards that, and yeah.
And so on the other side, then professional league is independently run. What's the day-to-day of the federation? What's the primary focus in terms of its outputs?
Its outputs, well, this administration really wants to focus on developing a player, on putting together a player development pathway. If you're familiar with, if people are familiar with how the Philippine Football Federation has developed its national teams, we've relied a lot on the overseas-based Filipinos. So these are players who were developed in other countries such as the United States, Europe, but mainly in the United States, well, for our women at least. But we really relied to our benefit on the Filipino diaspora because we have about 6 million Filipinos living all over the world. Any country you'll go to, you'll meet a Filipino, and the second generation children of these migrants are the basis of the formation of our national teams. Now, there's nothing against that. They're just as Filipino as those who were born here in the country. But we feel very strongly that it's our mandate as a federation to be able to develop those pathways for local players here in the country. So that's what we're trying to put together. So we have a very ambitious plan where we have programs from ages 3 to 6, 6 to 10. And we have our youth program, and then that all funnels into our national teams because to be honest, we didn't really have that in place. So what our federation did in the past, and that's no fault to them, you have to start somewhere. We get the best players from all over the world, from this Filipino diaspora. We put them together, and we were successful in Southeast Asia through our ASCALs, our Filipino men's national team, and we were very successful with our women's team because we qualified for the World Cup in 2023. But we want to be able to see that ratio sort of like, instead of being 99% overseas-based Filipinos as the basis for forming that team, we want to have more locally developed players enter into those national teams, because at the end of the day, it inspires the country. It makes our local population believe that we can do it. So that's really our mandate right now. We're focused on that development pathway. So basically grassroots and youth programs.
Watch this space then over the next decade for the development of the Philippines youth players and junior national teams. I'll certainly look out for that.
You have to get another mandate, James.
Absolutely. Fair enough. Let's take a little bit of a step sideways then, just to talk about something you mentioned before was, the Philippines is 7,000 islands, and maybe the context of what you mentioned there about putting into place a development program. I mean, as the deputy EGS, you obviously would have to deal with stakeholders internally, you're probably getting messages from right now talking to me. I mean, how do you manage the relationship with key stakeholders given your geographical challenges in the Philippines, and also convincing them of what, you mentioned the mandate, convincing them that they need to buy into your mandate?
I think in our culture, it's very important to establish a good relationship, personal relationship. So the way we engage stakeholders, especially our members and especially government, is to build a solid relationship with them where they can trust you. And that's the start. Like get to know them a little bit better. Don't even talk about programs or football or KPIs or results. Just get to know them, be friends. And once you establish that relationship, then you can talk on what works, and what really works and makes a relationship with a stakeholder sustainable is something that's always win-win. It can't just be one way where it benefits the federation or it just benefits that. It should be mutually beneficial. And those are the most sustainable partnerships. 7,000 islands is a challenge. And I think the biggest challenge of Philippine football development and sports development for that matter is logistics. It's so expensive to travel between islands because you have to fly. And that's really our biggest challenge when it comes to putting together that pathway that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, we heard similar about Indonesia, similar geographical challenges and logistics. Do you think that means that a lot of your football resources are maybe concentrated in certain areas just because of those geographical challenges? Is that just something you have to consciously do? Or do you try and take the approach of trying to reach as many people, as many islands, many, different regions as possible?
I think our mandate is to reach as many islands as possible, but you have to be realistic in the sense that you can't do that given the limitation of resources. So I guess when it comes to like an archipelago, probably the smartest way is to pilot first in certain areas, and then cluster certain regions together. So you don't have a program for maybe six areas in one region, but you sort of do the cluster approach. Maybe those 6 areas can go into one like central development program. But piloting, I think, is very important for our situation because we're 7,000 islands, but different islands have different cultures, and we have different languages that are spoken here as well. So we have a main language, which is Filipino, or we call it Tagalog, but there are different dialects. And, we're one country, but there is this like, if I'm from this island, I have this mentality that I'm from here sort of thing.
Sure.
It is a balancing act because that is our mandate, is to spread football all over the country. But
the interesting challenge, and like I said, we'll watch this space for your junior national teams over the next decade. So Kevin, I've asked everyone that has come on the podcast, what success looks like for them, but I don't need to ask you that question because you actually have had success recently with the announcement from FIFA that the Women's Futsal World Cup will be hosted in the Philippines next year, the first ever, as I understand it, FIFA competition to be hosted in the Philippines. And I know that you were behind that bidding process on behalf of the Federation. You were one of the key leaders in getting that delivered. So I'd love to hear from you to tell us about how that came about, challenges you faced, how you put the bid together, and how things look behind the scenes. We see on the outside, or people see on the outside, a bid goes and there's a result at the end, someone holding up an envelope. But I think we'd really like to hear how that, goes from start to finish. And obviously congratulations on being awarded the Women's World Futsal Cup.
Well, I'd like to correct you, James. I did not lead the bid, so it was really a team effort. First of all, President like John Gutierrez, if he didn't support the practice, it wouldn't have happened. Our General Secretary as well, who signs off on everything, if he didn't believe this wouldn't have happened, and also our senior management team. So it was really a team effort. I would say this bid started 2-3 years ago. it's always been a dream of mine because in the Philippines, our context is we have a lot of girls playing futsal here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a large number of girls who play futsal because it's the modality that our Department of Education, which is our Ministry of Education, supports and promotes in the Philippines. So given that, even before I went to the FIFA Master, I saw so much potential with women's futsal that I said, you know what? Let's try to focus. Let's try to build this game. There wasn't a World Cup yet. It didn't exist. So it was really 2-3 years in the making. And then 3 years ago, even before the FIFA Council announced that they would organize Women's Futsal World Cup, we were all in on it in the federation. We're like, let's organize internationals. Let's invite teams here. Let's have them come over. Let's play. Let's put together a women's futsal team, even if there wasn't really much solidarity assistance from the federations, international federations. But we just went ahead and did it. And I think that played a big role in us getting awarded this event is because we showed from 2-3 years ago, we were very serious about this. We may not be a big futsal nation. We may not be Brazil. We may not be high up there in the rankings, but it was definitely a priority. And we were serious about it, like when we bid for it. So we started our bid last year, late last year, put together the documents that were required. What are your venues? What are your training venues? What is your legacy plan, etc. We put that together and then we submitted it to FIFA. And fortunately, like we were able to get awarded the event.
What was the biggest challenge then for you in that process?
Convincing people here that we can actually pull it off.
Yeah.
Meaning, because futsal is not really, if you look at the federation, any federation, priority is always football, right? So to be able to convince stakeholders that no, we can really do well in futsal. There is a chance that we can do this for futsal. So just convincing people was the biggest challenge. But
and what do you hope will be the legacy of the tournament?
I hope that after this tournament, we can have a collegiate futsal league. I hope we can also have a professional women's futsal league here. But more than that, I want to see more girls playing. I want women's futsal to be the number one women's sport in the country, because currently it's volleyball right now. Yeah. So, Filipinos have this bias for indoor sports. So basketball is the number one sport for men. Volleyball is the number one sport for women. I kind of want to make futsal part of that conversation. Yeah. And we have 110 million people here. So there's enough to take up the sport.
More than enough people to go around the different sports, that's for sure. Absolutely. So we're about 3 or 4 minutes left. Leadership style. Talk to us a little bit about your leadership style and how you manage to implement what you need to implement internally, how you manage staff, how you balance competing interests potentially. Love to hear your thoughts on leadership and how to get the best out of your people.
Well, first of all, I think when you put people on your team, you need to get the right people on it. And these are not just people who, well, of course, they have to be qualified, but they have to be people that are really good, that you don't have to manage them that much, right? And because you bring those type of people onto your team, my leadership style is really to empower them. I'm not a dictator. I'm no means a dictator. Because if you're a dictator, I feel that it's not so efficient. You're spending so much time micromanaging people when you could be doing so many other things. And I learned from this job, there's too many fires to micromanage.
Yeah.
So empower people, listen. So my leadership style is I like to listen to people and then facilitate discussion. So I'm the first one who says, I don't have answers to problems that you have, but let's talk about it and let me know what you think, and then we can come up with the solutions together. And those are lessons that I learned from the FIFA Master, actually. And we're just listening to people, different views, and sort of like empowering them to just to say what they think, right? And
So to go back to what you said just then at the start, so would you say that finding the right fit for a person is more valuable to a workspace than their technical skills, getting the person right first as opposed to the technical skills? Or is it a mix?
I think it's a mix. I think number one, though, when you bring somebody to your team, they have to have the right attitude. I think that's the most important thing because, okay, some people may not have the skills, but that can be addressed if they have the right mindset and the right attitude. You know, the type of person who wants to learn, who wants to grow, and you can teach them, right? And they will improve exponentially once they're in your team. It's definitely mixed, but the most important, if you ask me what's the most important thing, it's attitude and being able to work in a team. I really like working with people who are very humble, who are willing to admit that they made a mistake, or they're willing to admit that, oh, you know, like your idea is better than mine, sort of thing. And that's because that's the only way to work with my leadership style. I'm very democratic, I'm very empowering, and you kind of want to have those team players on your bus or on your vehicle, right?
Absolutely. No, that sounds great. That make me want to come work for you now, mate. So but let's finish up. Let's finish up. We've got about just over a minute left. I mean, very quick fire. In your view, what are some of the things you might have seen from inside the industry where we can talk about future trends in football or sport as a whole? What are we going to be seeing over the next half decade to 2030 in the sports industry?
Well, in the Philippine context, and I know this is a global trend, this growth in esports, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's become so popular that I noticed that a lot of kids who were maybe 10 years ago, they would stick into football or stick into basketball, they dropped it altogether to focus on esports, right? So that's definitely something that we need to take advantage of or look at closely. AI has changed a lot the last few years, and you can see how it's also affecting the way coaches make decisions or players prepare for big competitions. And like anything in AI, we need to maybe adopt it, not be afraid of it, but also take a step back and say, hey, like where are we taking this? So we need to be careful on that. And I guess the continuous digitization of sports, it's just I've seen because my kids consume and participate sports in a different way that I did as a kid. So me or most people who are watching this participate in the team, they joined the club. But my kids are really, and the reasons for joining that team was because I wanted to be like Kobe Bryant or, I wanted to play like Messi or Ronaldo. But my kids' motivation is just to have fun, to participate in a sport that's easy to pick up. So pickleball, they also consume sports in a different way. So they don't like to watch matches anymore. For them, it's boring to watch a full match or even highlights. They don't have enough. The kids' attention span right now is so short. So, they're into the stories posted by athletes. Or
exactly the same experience with my son, who's 9.5 and is obsessed with the NBA, obsessed with football, but it's short attention spans and stories and highlights, right? He'll watch the NBA playoffs and watch the last 2 minutes of the match. It's fascinating that's such a global phenomenon. But all right, so we've got the future trends: esports, AI, digitization, and you're not the first person that's mentioned pickleball. I think I'm going to have to look into it and give it a go.
I read reports it's the fastest growing sport in North America, in the United States.
Wow.
It really boomed in the pandemic because there are not enough tennis courts, but you can play pickleball anywhere. And then all of a sudden I noticed, oh, there's a pickleball court here popping out in the Philippines, and then somebody's playing pickleball there. To the point where now our shopping malls on the top floor, they have pickleball courts that you can play on for free.
Wow.
So, and it's
Pickleball. Watch this space. There you go.
yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
amazing.
but I'm sure there are other sports like I know some other kids are really into obstacle course.
Mm.
I don't know if you know that sport
Yeah,
where
yeah,
put up
exactly.
obstacle races and kids just love it, right? So it's not exactly Ironman because or junior the kids Ironman because you have to bike a long way, you have to swim a long way, but here you just go through an obstacle course and you're good.
Yeah, my son exactly loves that too. It's fascinating. Or some good future trends there, some different ones and some similar ones to what we've heard before. But look, Kevin, that was such a great conversation, and all the best for hosting, the Women's Futsal World Cup next year in the Philippines. And I think there's a lot of takeaways there for anyone that wants to watch. So, on behalf of the FC, thank you very much for your time and giving us a few moments of your time. Like you said, is you don't have much personal time, so I really appreciate you taking time out of that day and having a chat. Cheers.
I appreciate and thank you for having me over the show. Thanks.